Lejeune Montgomery Tabron, you are the president and CEO of the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. Could you tell us about your journey and how you became CEO of one of the largest foundations in the world?
Well, yes, I can start there. My journey is a very interesting journey in that I always talk about my journey by speaking of my parents. Both my parents were born in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and at the time were unable to find opportunities there. And so they were part of that northern migration where many African Americans migrated from the South in Mississippi to the North. And my parents chose Detroit, Michigan, where my father found opportunities in the auto industry. Along the way on this journey, they had 10 children, and I'm number 9 of 10 children. And so that was a journey in and of itself. But because they moved to Detroit, we had opportunities. I think the education was very accessible in the city of Detroit in the 50s and the 60s, and all of my 9 siblings and I received quality education. I would hope that everyone could have the education that I had. But on my journey, I decided I wanted to be an accountant. So my undergraduate degree is in accounting, and then I later received a graduate degree in finance, but I call myself a numbers person, a financial person, and was recruited to work at the Kellogg Foundation in its accounting function to become the controller. And that was almost 36 years ago. So I will be celebrating my 36th anniversary at the foundation in May, a few months from now. But I started as the controller, and throughout my career, I have had opportunities to perform almost every function in the foundation over time, both from the operations side and as well as the programmatic side. And my greatest honor was to be given the responsibility to do the programming in the state of Mississippi, and to go back and give back to the children and families that is the same place where my family was from. But 9 years ago, I was then named the president and CEO of the Kellogg Foundation. And again, I continue to lead an organization that I think is bold and courageous and focused on the root causes of inequality, and to be able to lead this organization and its mission to improve the lives of the most vulnerable children is my greatest honor.
Wow. Absolutely incredible. So inspiring, Lejeune. Could you tell us about the W.K. Kellogg Foundation and its aims and objectives?
Absolutely. The Kellogg Foundation was established by Will Keith Kellogg in 1930. Will Keith Kellogg also established the cereal company. And later in his life, after his cereal company had reached great success, he wanted to make sure that his wealth that he had generated from the company would serve children. So in 1930, Will Keith Kellogg established the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. He instructed us to do as we please with the resources so long as they promote the health, happiness, and well-being of children. So we have pursued his legacy, and his legacy also included the request that the resources promote children of all creed, races, nationality, and sexual orientation. And so we have continued on that journey, but we know now that in order for children to thrive, their families have to be able to provide for them, and their communities must be equitable places of opportunity. So our work, while centered on children, really looks at the environment by which children have around them. And we want to make sure that that environment is equitable, that allows every parent to achieve opportunities and success so that they can support their children. Our work looks at early education, early childhood education for young people. We look at workforce and equitable employment for the parents. We look at communities, and we want our communities to be equitable, so we support endeavors that provide healing and racial healing within communities, because we believe the root of opportunity is making sure that all of our communities can achieve racial equity. And in order for communities to achieve racial equity, we believe that racial healing is necessary. That's part of the journey. It's at the heart of racial equity. And so we support that journey for communities so that our children can thrive.
It's absolutely incredible. I mean, what an amazing life that you're having. What an extraordinary, sort of privilege to be able to do something with such a wonderful foundation. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm sort of going off script, but it just must be extraordinary, Lejeune, every day to do work like that. I mean,
it truly is. And I have to say, based on my own journey, it's so much aligned with my own personal passion and mission that it doesn't feel like work. It feels like the pursuit of a dream that should not be a dream any longer. Children thriving should be what this country and this world was made to do. And so my work is delivering on that promise for young people, to make sure that we're giving them and providing for them opportunities to thrive.
Wow, Lejeune, amazing, wonderful. I'm over here in the UK, as you know, but my entire life is looking at Kellogg. I mean, my entire life. I mean, the company has just touched almost every human being on the planet. And there's kind of nothing, there aren't many things that are like that in this world. Incredible. On the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, could you talk to us about the importance of justice, equality, diversity, and inclusion?
First of all, I couldn't be more honored to be having this conversation on this day. This is so much at the heart of what we are doing at the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. For us, racial equity is at the root of how justice and opportunity will exist for all people and children. Racial equity for us means that any person will not be limited because of the color of their skin. And unfortunately, today, many people are limited by factors that have nothing to do with their capability. And so what we want to do is make sure that no one is faced with limitations on their creative and their talent, their creativity and their talent. And what we know is that in order for that to be true, we have to face our history. We have to face the structures that are racialized, that exist around the world. And we have to dismantle those structures, and we have to replace them with structures that allow for every human being to thrive. And our work is about humanity, and so is the work of this day. And so what we want to do is support connecting people with one another, connecting people, building relationships, and allowing people then to come together and analyze the systems and structures and practices that currently exist and make sure that they are working for every person and every child. And if they're not, to have the courage to change them. And that's what we support in our efforts today, is making sure that people can have the space for healing, to learn together, to connect with one another, and together to create environments for all people and children to thrive.
Wow. Amazing. I can see why you're the CEO of the Kellogg Foundation. It's wonderful to hear you speak. I kept thinking, wow, if only you were the president. That would be awesome.
Well, what I would say is sometimes the work and the progress happens on the ground from community to community, and it sometimes will rise up versus the opposite force. So we believe we are doing the work of the nation by working in communities and allowing people to take this on and to create the conditions that they want for their children.
Fantastic. Very, very important. So meaningful. I mean, and in a situation, where the world is in such a complex place, and, we're on the edge. And so, your funds, your work, I mean, I'm sure you've probably felt has never been more crucial than it is at this moment. And I'm sad that that's the case. And I'm sad that we say that, but that, your support of young people is just crucially important. So fantastic that you're doing it. Where are we in relation to a world that's free of racism?
Well, and you started this conversation by, just reflecting on where we are in the world. And the narrative that we hear is not very hopeful, right? We hear the divisive discourse across the world. It does make one wonder where hope is. For us, as we again have dug deeply, we conducted a poll, for example, in the United States. And what we were able to find is that people, one, now resonate with the fact that there is racism in America. People now acknowledge that. And secondly, what we have found is that people actually want to do something about that, particularly in their own community. And so we are very hopeful because even though there's this national and global narrative that we are divided, what we are seeing is there's a growing number of people actually wanting us to come together. And this information was disaggregated. White people are now at least 50% saying that we need to do something about the issues of racism in our country. So that makes us hopeful. And part of our work is about changing the narrative, because there is a national narrative that tends to lean very negative on this subject. What we've been trying to do through our work is show the other side of this work, show people who are on the ground, coming together, connecting across their humanity and changing systems so that they work for all. And I believe there's a movement happening in this space. And if we were to follow and show and share those stories, we will create inspiration and hope for others. And we'll also see that this work can be done. Some people think, racism is a given. It isn't a given. It's an action. It's a practice that can be changed.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I mean, Lejeune, we don't know each other apart from this moment, but we feel like we know each other now. And but my whole life is about constructive narrative. I've been on the road 22 years, 138 countries, created the World's Day of Peace on the 21st of September, and then brokered ceasefires in Afghanistan with the Taliban, which allowed 10,000 doctors to go in and vaccinate 1.4 million children as a consequence of stopping the fighting in the most complex place of the world on the Day of Peace. And now, of course, about 2 billion people involved in that day. And that's why the High Commissioner of Human Rights said to me, would I now produce all the content for the World's Day of Anti-Racism? So you've used a phrase there, narrative. And for me, Lejeune, there's an awful lot of things that we can do, but my little understanding of the world and the journey that I've had tells me that constructive narrative that informs, inspires, and engages is absolutely crucial to humanity's survival. And so it's wonderful to know that you are obviously very passionate about that. I certainly am, because I'm not quite sure, unless we tell that story that's constructive, that does inform, inspire, and lead to the engagement, then I'm not sure how we're going to shift the consciousness around the fundamental issues we face.
We couldn't agree with you more. And that's why the work at the Kellogg Foundation is very practical and grassroots. And what we know, same as you've just said, who controls the narrative is critical, and how we think about, creating a future for everyone to thrive. And part of the work that we're doing around our truth, racial healing, and transformation effort is giving that power back to people in communities so that they can share their own narrative about their past, as well as their inspiration and their work that they're doing to create a better future. And we adopted 14 communities across the United States. We've been supporting them since 2017. And what we are seeing is the fruits of those investments, where communities are coming together and making changes that really matter. For example, in my hometown of Battle Creek, Michigan, the work there regarding our truth, racial healing, and transformation effort is about fair housing. And we know that policies were created to separate us, and housing policies were created to advantage some and disadvantage others. In Battle Creek, they're understanding that, and they've created a collaborative that includes realtors and public officials, community residents, and together they're looking at those housing policies and determining how to create affordable housing in our community. And those are the types of effort that start with healing. It starts with bringing people together and having them speak of the impact of the current housing policy. And for some to hear stories that they may not have heard of how those policies affect a family's ability to thrive and to care for their children. But once we have set that table for truth and conversation and dialogue, it ends with transformation. People determine what can we do to make this right. And that's the work that then is owned by community residents. They take the leadership to make sure that it happens and the practices change accordingly. And we get really inspired when we can see this happening on the ground.
Wow. Amazing, Lejeune. It's important for people, as we've just really both discussed together, to feel inspired and empowered when thinking about the elimination of racial discrimination. Have you seen any examples that show us that this breakthrough is possible?
Yes, and the one that I just described is an example, and there are many. We talk a lot, and I'll speak a little bit about Buffalo because recently there was a heinous hate crime there, where the grocery store in Buffalo, where most of the African Americans live, there was a mass shooting. And Buffalo also is one of our truth, racial healing, and transformation communities. So when this happened, we connected with the community. And of course, we are very supportive of their work. And they had already created a space for healing and a space for dialogue. And in this moment, what they determined was, we want to assist in the healing process in the community. And what we were able to do was actually deploy people who could help with this dialogue, who could bring people together and allow them to address this head on. And, what we know about Buffalo is it was interesting because the shooter came from outside of the community. But what we know about inside of the community is that this work of healing and racial equity had begun. And we believe that because of that work, the healing process there was at least one that was, I think, inspirational and forward-thinking. The other thing they have been doing in Buffalo was really looking at opportunities for young people and already building opportunities and pathways for young people, particularly people returning citizens, to have opportunities to thrive, and that there would not be a closed door for anyone. And again, we know that this is possible when we bring multi-sectors together to deal with these issues where they truly understand the impact of the structures that have been there in the past that did not work for everyone. So again, as we see the transformation happening in all of these communities, we know that a concerted effort that starts with community, with people telling their own stories, but connecting across differences. We know that you can't just speak to the choir. You have to bring those differences into a room and allow people to grapple with those differences, but get to a common place. And I've seen it in every time that we get to a common place. And that's the place where we can then envision a future that can be better for all of us.
Amazing, amazing. We have wars, the destruction of our planet, violence in our communities. Where do you draw your hope and inspiration from despite all this?
So, this may sound cliche, but I get my hope from young people. And is not that we, serve children and young people. It truly is because when I'm in the room with young people, young leaders, people who truly live this and from every bone in their body, and they're not manipulated at all by media or any other sense. They know in their heart that racial equity must exist for everyone. Their actions are bold. They're bold, they're creative, they're insightful, they do their research. And I just get truly inspired by that. They're not acting from tradition, they're acting from passion. And I can't have anything but hope when I'm in the room with the young people who really care about our humanity and about creating a racially just society for everyone.
Finally, for individuals who are watching, how can they support you and your incredible work?
First and foremost, I would invite everyone to go to our website, which is wkkf.org. From there, you can see all of our efforts in this space. You will see we have a link to Every Child Thrives, which is a place where not only the Kellogg Foundation, but all of our partners post this, what they're doing in this space and how the work is building to create spaces for children to thrive. And I think what one would find on our website is that inspiration, and they'll also find concrete examples of what people are doing all over the nation and the world. They'll read about, our Racial Equity 2030 Challenge, where we are supporting 5 awardees from across the globe dealing with some of the most structurally racist practices in our existence. And they'll be able to follow and see the progress that they're making. And again, you'll find examples and ways to engage in this work. So WKKF.org. a place where is rich with examples of hope and inspiration.
Thank you very much. Well, Lejeune, it's been an absolute privilege and an honor to speak to you, and we wish you the very best with your incredible work.
Thank you. It was a pleasure and honor to speak with you as well, and an honor to be a part of this day.
Thank you, Lejeune.